Chapter 3, Three's a Company. You ought to be going quietly, and you ought to go soon, said Gandalf. 2 or 3 weeks had passed, and Frodo still showed no sign of being ready to leave. I know, but it's hard to do both things, he replied. If I were to disappear like old Bilbo, the story would quickly spread all over the Shire. Of course you mustn't disappear, said Gandalf.
Absolutely mustn't. I am speaking early, not immediately.
If you can think of a way to slip out of the Shire without attracting notice, then a little delay is worthwhile. But you must not delay too long. What about in the autumn, on or after our birthday? Frodo asked. I think I could arrange it by then. In truth, he was very reluctant to begin, and now the time had come. Bag End suddenly seemed a much more comfortable dwelling than it had for many years, and he wanted to savour his last summer in the Shire as much as possible. He knew that when autumn came, at least some part of his heart would turn to thoughts of departure, as it always did at this season. He had indeed steeled himself to leave on his 50th birthday, that is, Bilbo's 128th birthday. It seemed like a fitting day to start and follow Bilbo's trail. Following Bilbo was the most important thought in Bilbo's mind, and this made the idea of leaving bearable for him. He tried to think as little as possible about the ring and where it might ultimately lead him, but he did not reveal all his thoughts to Gandalf. What the wizard guessed was always hard to articulate. He looked at Frodo and smiled.
Very well, he said.
I think that is the right course, but do not delay any longer.
I have been very anxious.
In the meantime, be careful and do not let slip any hint of where you intend to go. Keep an eye on Sam Gamgee. If he lets it out, I'll turn him into a toad. As for where I shall go, said Frodo, it is hard to say, for I have no clear idea yet. Don't be foolish, said Gandalf. I do not advise leaving an address at the post, but you are leaving the Shire, and this must not be known until you are well away. And you must go, or at least set out in any direction, east, west, south, north, and that direction must be kept secret. My mind has been entirely taken up with thoughts of leaving Bag End.
And saying goodbye, and I have not thought at all about the route, said Frodo. Where shall I go?
And by what means? What is my purpose? Bilbo went to seek treasure. He came back. But I am going to lose a treasure and not return as far as I can see. But you cannot see very far ahead, said Gandalf. Neither can I. Perhaps your task is to seek the crack of doom. But that task may be for others. I do not know at this time. At any cost, you must be ready to travel a long journey. Not necessarily, said Frodo. But in the meantime, what am I to do? Meet with danger. But do not rush or go straight into it, replied the wizard. If you need my advice, then go to Rivendell. The journey will not be too dangerous, though the road is no longer as easy as it used to be, and it will grow worse with the years. Rivendell, said Frodo. Very well, I will go east, and I will reach Rivendell. I will take Sam to visit the elves. He will be very glad. He said it lightly, but his heart beat fast with the desire to see Elrond Half-Elven's house, and to breathe the air of the deep valley where many of the white people still lived in peace. One autumn afternoon, a strange piece of news spread to Ivy Bush and the Green Dragon. The giants and other ominous signs at the Shire's borders had temporarily been forgotten because of more pressing matters. Mr. Frodo was selling Bag End.
Indeed, he had actually sold it to the Sackville Bagginses.
Even the privy, said some. At a bargain price, said others. And it seems Mrs. Lobelia is the purchaser. Otho had passed away a few years ago, quite long-lived but disappointed at age 102. Why Mr. Frodo was selling his charming little home was even more discussable than the price, and people clung to the idea, encouraged by nods and hints from Mr. Baggins himself, that Frodo had run out of money. He would leave Hobbiton and live quietly by continuing to trade in Buckland among his Brandybuck relatives. So he can be as far from the Sackville Bagginses as possible, some added. But firm evidence of the Bagginses' immense wealth at Bag End made all this hard to believe. even more incredible than any other reason or unreasonable story the curious could invent. Thus most people concluded it must be an undiscovered dark plot of Gandalf. Though he kept very quiet and went nowhere by day, everyone believed he was lurking in Bag End. Nevertheless, Frodo's departure could entirely fit Gandalf's design. There was nothing suspicious about Frodo Baggins going down to Buckland. "Yes, I shall leave this autumn," he said. "Merry Brandybuck is looking for a cosy, shaded house, or perhaps a small cottage. Indeed, with Merry's help, he had chosen and bought a small house at Crickhollow, in a village beyond Bucklebury. Except for Sam, he pretended to everyone that he would settle there permanently. The decision to depart eastward gave him an idea, for Buckland lay on the Shire's eastern border, and he had lived there in his childhood, so returning there at least seemed very plausible. Gandalf remained in the Shire for over 2 months. Then one afternoon, at the end of the month of September, just after Frodo's plans had been finally arranged, he suddenly announced he would leave the next morning. "I hope only for a short time," he said, "but I will go down past the southern border to gather some news if possible."
"I have indeed been idle more than I should." He spoke lightly, but Frodo felt he was anxious. "Is something wrong?" he asked. No.
"But I heard something that worried me and needs checking. If I think you need to start immediately, I will return at once, or at least send word. In the meantime, follow the plan, but be more careful than ever, especially with the ring. I must emphasize once again, do not use it. He left at dawn." "I may return at any time," he said. "At the latest, I shall be back for the farewell party. I think you may need me as a companion on the road." At first, Frodo was quite confused and often wondered what Gandalf could have heard. But gradually this passed, and in fine weather he could temporarily forget his troubles. The Shire seldom had a truly fresh or splendid autumn. Trees were heavy with apples, honey dripped from hives, and the grain grew tall and heavy. Autumn passed pleasantly before Frodo began to worry about Gandalf's return. September came and still there was no news. Birthday, and also the departure day, drew near, and he saw no sign or message from him. Bag End became busy. Some of Frodo's friends came to help him pack, Fredegar Bolger and Folko Boffin, and of course his particular friends, Pippin Took and Merry Brandybuck. They made quite a lively stir. By September 20th, 2 carts heavily laden with belongings headed for Buckland, carrying the furniture and things Frodo had not sold to his new house via the Brandywine Bridge Road. The next day, Frodo grew truly anxious, keeping a watch for Gandalf. On Thursday, his birthday morning, there was a clear, bright dawn like the great feast of Bilbo long ago. Gandalf still had not appeared. In the afternoon, Frodo held a farewell party. It was small, only a dinner for him and the 4 friends who had helped him, but he was restless and had no appetite. The thought of soon parting from his young friends weighed heavily on his heart. He wondered how he could leave them. However, the 4 younger hobbits were cheerful, and the early party became lively despite Gandalf's absence. The dining room was nearly empty except for a table and chairs, but the food was excellent, and the wine was fine. Frodo's wine was not among what had been sold to the Sackville Bagginses. "Whatever happens to the rest of my belongings,
once the SBs lay their claws on them, at least I have found a good home for them,"
said Frodo, finishing his glass. It was the last drop of Old Wynyard. After they had sung many songs and talked over many things they had done together, they raised their glasses to toast Bilbo's birthday, drinking to his health in Frodo's usual way. Then they went out for fresh air, gazing at the stars, and went to bed. Frodo's party was over, and Gandalf still had not come. The next morning, they busied themselves packing other bundles with the remaining luggage. Merry supervised this, driving the cart with Fatty, Fredegar Bolger. "Someone must get there and watch the house before you arrive," said Merry. "All right, see you later, the day after tomorrow, if you don't sleep on the way." Folko arrived home after lunch, but Pippin was still at the rear. Frodo could not sleep and was worried, listening in vain for any news of Gandalf. He decided to wait until sunset. Then, if Gandalf wanted him to start at once, he would go to Crickhollow and might even get there first, for Frodo would go on foot. His plan, in which the desire to see the Shire one last time was as important as any other reason, was to walk from Hobbiton to Bucklebury Ferry, which was quite manageable. "I shall also give myself a little training," he said, looking at himself in the dusty mirror of the half-empty room. He had not undertaken long walks for some time, and his reflection seemed flabby, he thought, after lunch. The Sackville Bagginses, Lobelia, and her red-haired son, Lotho, arrived much to Frodo's annoyance.
"At last it is ours,"
said Lobelia, entering. This was not polite, nor entirely accurate, for the sale of Bag End would not take effect until just before midnight. But Lobelia could be forgiven. She had been forced to wait 77 years since she had hoped to get Bag End, and now she was 100 years old. Anyway, she made sure that nothing she had paid for was taken, and she wanted the key. It took her a long while to be satisfied, as she carried along a detailed inventory and checked it thoroughly. At last, she left with Lotho a spare key and a promise that the other key would be kept at the Gamgee house on Bagshot Street. She sniffed and made it clear that she thought the Gamgee household might break into the cottage at night. Frodo did not offer her any tea. He had tea by himself with Pippin and Sam Gamgee in the kitchen. There had been an official announcement that Sam would go to Buckland to work for Mr. Frodo and to look after his garden. An arrangement confirmed by Gaffer, though it gave him no comfort at the prospect of having Lobelia as a neighbour. "Our last meal at Bag End," said Frodo, pulling a chair back sharply. They left the washing up for Lobelia. Pippin and Sam lifted their 3 bags and piled them in the hallway. Pippin went outside for one last walk in the garden. Sam had disappeared. The sun had set. Bag End looked sad, gloomy, and untidy. Frodo wandered through the familiar rooms and saw the evening light fading on the walls, darkness creeping into the corners. Inside, the house was growing dim. He went out and walked down to the gate at the end of the lane, then a short way down Hill Road. He half expected to see Gandalf striding up through the dark. The sky was clear, and the stars were bright. "It will be a fine night," he said aloud. "A good night to start.
"I like this walk."
I can't bear loitering here any longer."
"I shall set out, and Gandalf must follow me." He turned and climbed the slope, for he heard sounds around the corner at the end of Bagshot Row. One voice was clearly old Gaffer's.
The other was strange and seemed irritated. He could not make out what it said, but he heard Gaffer's reply, which seemed to be a hiss. The old man seemed annoyed. "No, Mr. Baggins has gone. This morning, and my lad Sam went with him. Afterwards, all his things were moved."
"Yes, sold and taken away, I tell you why."
"Why is it any business of mine or yours?" "Where to? Nothing secret about it." "He moved down to Bucklebury or somewhere like that, far below." "Yes, down there, a tidy road."
"I've never been so far myself."
"They are strangers in Buckland."
"No, I didn't leave any messages."
"Farewell." Footsteps echoed down the hill. Frodo vaguely wondered why their absence from the hill made him feel so relieved. "I get sick of questions and curiosity about my own affairs, I suppose," he thought. "How meddlesome they all are." He half wanted to go and ask Gaffer who wanted to know such things, but he decided it was better, or worse, not to, and turned away, hurrying back to Bag End. Pippin was sitting on his bundle in the hallway. Sam was not there. Frodo entered the dark doorway. "Sam!" he called. "Sam!"
"Time to go." "I'm here, sir,"
came a voice from afar, and then Sam hurried out, wiping his mouth. He had just said farewell to the beer barrel in the cellar. "All ready, Sam?" Frodo asked. "Yes, sir. I'll see to the last bit, sir." Frodo shut the door and locked it, handing the key to Sam. "Take this home, Sam," he said. "Then cut across the street and meet us as quickly as you can at the little gate behind the lawn. Tonight we won't go through the village."
"Too much noise in the forested hills." Sam ran off. "Good. Now at last we are setting out,"
said Frodo. They slung on their packs, lifted their staffs, and went around the corner toward the western side of Bag End. "Goodbye," said Frodo, looking back at the dark windows. He waved, then turned, following Bilbo if he had known, and hurried after Peregrine down the garden path. They leaped over the fenced lowlands at the end and entered the grass, rustling through the darkened turf. At the foot of the hill, on the western slope, they entered a gate onto a narrow country lane. They stopped there to adjust the straps of their packs. Just then Sam appeared, running breathlessly. His heavy pack was lifted high on his shoulders, atop which was a long, shapeless bundle he called a hat. In the dark, he looked very much like a dwarf. "I am sure you have given me all the heaviest things," said Frodo. "I pity the snails, carrying their houses on their backs." "I could carry more, sir." "My pack is still light," said Sam stoutly, not quite truthfully. "No, no, Sam," said Pippin. "That's better for him. He carries nothing but what he ordered us to carry."
Lately his muscles have slackened and he will feel lighter with some of his own things. Too good for a poor old hobbit.
Frodo laughed. "I shall be as thin as a willow branch, I'm sure, before we reach Buckland. But I am talking nonsense. I don't know whether you could carry more than your share, Sam, and I shall see when we next pack." He picked up his staff again. "Well, we all like walking in the dark," he said, "so let's put a few miles behind us before sleeping." They followed the little western lane for a short distance. Then they left it, turning left, and silently went into the fields again. They walked in single file along the fences bordering the meadow, and the night cloaked them. They were almost invisible in their dark cloaks, as if all of them had magical rings. Being hobbits and keeping silence, they made no sound that even other hobbits could hear. Even the wild animals in the fields and woods were scarcely aware of their passing. After a while they crossed the water west of Hobbiton, over a narrow plank bridge. The stream looked like a dark, winding ribbon bordered by the ripple of rushes. A few miles south they hurried across a main road leading from the Brandywine. Now they were in Tookland and turned southeast toward Green Hill Village. As they began to climb its first slope, they looked back and saw the distant lights of Hobbiton twinkling far away in the peaceful water valley. They quickly disappeared behind the fences of the dark land, followed by Bywater beside its grey pool. When the last lights of the farms had faded behind them, peeking through the trees, Frodo looked back and waved.
"I do not know if I shall ever see this valley again," he said quietly. After about 3 hours they paused.
The night was clear, cold and misty, with thin wisps rising from the streams and meadows below. The thin pine branches swayed in a gentle wind overhead, forming a dark lattice against the deep sky. They ate a very modest supper for hobbits, then continued. They soon descended a narrow road, climbed again, then descended. Blending into the shadows ahead, the road led to Woodhall, then Stock, then Bucklebury Ferry. It climbed from the main road in the water valley, winding pantingly along the edge of the green hills toward Woody End, a wild corner of East Farthing. After a while, they entered a lane winding deep among tall trees, rustling their leaves in the night. It was truly dark. At first they spoke quietly, murmuring to avoid prying ears. Then they walked in silence, and Pippin began to lag behind. Finally, as they began to climb a steep slope, he stopped and yawned. "I am too sleepy," he said. "I shall soon drop on the road. Do you intend to let your legs sleep too? Nearly midnight already." "I think you like walking at night," said Frodo, "but not in too much haste. Merry will expect us the day after tomorrow, so we have nearly 2 days left. We will find a first resting place. The wind comes from the west," said Sam. "If we go to the far side of the hill, we shall find a sheltered and secluded spot, sir. There is a dry place among the firs, if I remember rightly." Sam knew the lands within 20 miles of Hobbiton fairly well, but his geographical knowledge was limited to that. At the top of the hill they entered a row of fir trees. They left the path and went into the dark, resinous-smelling woods, gathering dead branches to make a fire. They quickly got a warm, crackling fire under a large fir tree, sitting around it for a while until they began to nod. Then each curled up at the base of a large tree root in their cloaks and blankets, and soon fell asleep. They posted no guard. Frodo was not even worried about danger, as they were still in the Shire. Some animals came to look at them as the fire died down. A fox ran across the woods on its business, stopping for several minutes to sniff. Hobbits,
it thought. Ah, what now?
I've heard many strange things here, but I seldom hear of a hobbit sleeping under a tree.
And here are 3.
Surely something unusual will follow. It was right, though it would never know more about the matter. Morning came, pale and damp. Frodo woke first and found the tree roots had made a hollow in his back and his neck was stiff. A fine start.
Why didn't I ride?
He thought, as he often did at the beginning of a journey. And all my soft, cosy beds have been sold to the Sackville Bagginses. The tree roots will do, he stretched. Get up, hobbits, he called. A fine morning indeed. Fine for what? Said Pippin, peeking from beneath his blanket with one eye.
Sam, have breakfast ready at 9:30.
Do you have hot water for washing? Sam got up, looking dazed.
No, sir, I don't, sir,
he said. Frodo pulled the blanket off Pippin and helped him up, then stepped toward the edge of the woods. The sun in the east was shining red, dispelling the thick mist that lay over the forest. The autumn leaves, gold and red, seemed to drift aimlessly in a hazy sea. Below him, a little to the left, a road ran straight down into a clearing and disappeared. Then he turned back toward Sam and Pippin, who were tending the fire. Water! Pippin called. Where's the water?
I didn't bring any in my pack, Frodo said.
We thought you'd have to fetch it yourself, Pippin said, busy pulling out food and cups. You'd better go. You can go too, Frodo said, and carry all the water bottles with you. There was a stream at the foot of the hill. They filled their bottles and stood by a small waterfall where the water fell a few feet onto a grey rock, heating it. It was as still as ice, and they blew on it as they washed their faces, hands and feet. When breakfast was done and all their packs repacked, it was past 10 o'clock, the weather clear and warm. They went down the cliff, crossed a stream running under the road, and climbed up the next slope, continuing like this up and down until another hillside. By then their cloaks, blankets, water, food, and other supplies felt unbearably heavy. The day promised to be warm and exhausting. However, after a few miles, the road no longer twisted up and down. It climbed to the top of a dull, zigzag ridge and then prepared to descend for the last time. In front of them stretched lowlands dotted with shrubs at intervals through a misty brown forest. They looked over Woody End toward the Brandywine River. The road ahead looked like a single thread. This road will go on forever, said Pippin, but I cannot walk without resting. It's time for lunch. He sat down at the roadside, looking east at the mist where the river lay beyond, at the edge of the Shire he had known all his life. Sam stood beside him, his round eyes wide as he gazed over lands he had never seen toward a new horizon. Do elves live in these woods?
He asked. I've never heard of that, said Pippin.
Frodo was silent. He too stared east along the road as if seeing it for the first time. Suddenly he spoke aloud, slowly as if speaking to himself. The road stretches to where?
Leads down to the starting gate here. A far road watches clouds drift. I wander again across the 1,000 miles, weary feet through many miles of road, seeking the main road that cuts my way. So many paths.
So many hearts. When will the journey's end be known? Almost like one of old Bilbo's songs, said Pippin. Or is it one you've made up? It doesn't seem very encouraging. I do not know, said Frodo. It came to me suddenly, as if I had made it. Yet perhaps I heard it long ago. Surely it recalls Bilbo's final years very much before he departed. He used to say there was only one road. and it was like a great river. It reached every threshold, every path was a branch of it. "It is dangerous work, Frodo, reaching your own threshold," he often said. "You step onto the road, and if you do not watch your step, you cannot know how far your mind will be carried. Do you realize it is the road through Mirkwood, and if you let it lead you, it may take you to the Lonely Mountain, or even further to worse lands?" He often said this on the path outside the front door of Bag End, especially after a long walk. "Ah, the road will not sweep me away, at least not for an hour," said Pippin, loosening his pack. The others followed his example, setting down their packs by the riverside and stretching their legs toward the road. After a short rest, they had a hearty lunch and rested a while longer. The sun had begun to lower, and the midday light shone on the road as they descended the hill. So far, they had seen no living creature on the road. This road was little used, especially unsuitable for carts, and so traffic to Woody End was scarce. They walked along for about an hour or more when Sam suddenly stopped as if listening. They were now on high ground, and the road behind stretched straight with the wind blowing across waving grass and tall trees outside the nearby forest. "I can hear a pony or horse trotting along the road behind," Sam said. They looked back, but a bend in the road prevented a clear view. "I wonder if it is Gandalf following us," Frodo said. But even as he spoke, he felt this was unlikely, and suddenly wanted to hide from the sight of the rider. "Perhaps it will not cause much trouble," he said guiltily. "But I should not be seen on the road by anyone. I get sick if my actions are observed and discussed. And if it is Gandalf," he added after a moment, "we can give him a surprise to make him pay for being late."
"Out of sight!"
The other two quickly turned left and dropped into a small hollow near the road. They lay on their backs there. Frodo hesitated a second. Curiosity or some other feeling wrestled with his desire to hide. The sound of hoofbeats grew nearer. At once he threw himself into the grass behind a tree, casting a shadow across the road. Then he raised his head, looking carefully over one of the large roots. A black horse was coming around the bend, not a pony for hobbits, but a full-sized horse. Atop it sat a large man hunched over the saddle, wrapped in a large black cloak and hood, so that only his boots showed on the stirrups. His face was hidden and could not be seen. As he rode past the tree beside Frodo, he paused. The rider sat still for a moment, head bowed as if listening. From inside the hood protruded a nose, sniffing uncertainly. His head tilted from side to side on the road. Suddenly an unreasonable fear gripped Frodo, and he thought of his ring. He dared not breathe, and the desire to take it from his pocket was so strong that he began to move his hand slowly. He felt that if he put it on, he would be safe. Gandalf's advice seemed too absurd. Bilbo had used the ring. "And I am still in the Shire," he thought, as his hand touched the chain. At that moment the rider raised his head and pulled sharply on the reins. The horse surged forward, first slowly, then speeding up. Frodo crept to the roadside and watched the rider until he faded into the distance. He could not be sure, but it seemed that suddenly, as soon as he left sight, the horse turned aside and went into the trees on the right. Yes.
"I find this very strange and truly disturbing," Frodo said to himself.
Moving back toward his companions, Pippin and Sam were still lying on the grass and had seen nothing, so Frodo described the rider and his strange behavior. "I cannot say why, but I feel certain he was watching or sniffing me, and I also feel certain that I do not want him to discover me. I have never seen or felt anything like this in the Shire before." "But what does that big man want with us?" said Pippin. "And what does he want here in this part of the world?" "There are some such men," said Frodo. "Down in South Farthing they get into trouble with big men, I believe. But I have never heard of anyone like this rider."
"I wonder where he came from." Excuse me, sir," Sam suddenly interjected. "I know where he came from."
"That is the rider who came from Hobbiton, unless there is more than one like him."
"And I know where he was going." "What do you mean?"
said Frodo sharply, looking at him in surprise. "Why didn't you say so earlier?" "I just remembered, sir. It was like this. When I returned to our hut yesterday afternoon with the key for my father, he said to me, 'Hello, Sam,' he said. 'I thought you went with Mr. Frodo this morning. A stranger came asking about Mr. Baggins at Bag End, and he had just left.
I sent him to Bucklebury. I don't like him.
He seemed quite angry when I told him that Mr. Baggins had left his old house forever.
He hissed at me.
What sort of man is he?' I asked Gaffer.
'I do not know,' he said.
'But he is not a hobbit. He is tall and black when he bent toward me.'
'I think he is one of the men from foreign lands.'
He spoke rather strangely. 'I could not stay there to listen further, sir, for you were waiting, and I myself did not pay much attention. Gaffer is old, somewhat blind, and when that stranger came up the hill and saw him talking to the air at the end of the street, it was already nearly evening.'
'I hope he caused no harm, sir, and neither did I. All the same, one cannot blame Gaffer,' Frodo said.
'In truth, I did hear him speaking with the stranger, who seemed to be inquiring about me, and I nearly went to ask who he was.'
'I wish I had done so, or that you had told me this earlier.'
'Perhaps I would have been more careful on the road.' Now there's still no link between this rider and Gaffer's stranger, Pippin said. 'We left Hobbiton rather secretly, and I understand how he could have followed us.' 'And what about the sniffing, sir?' Sam asked. 'And Gaffer said he was a man in black.' 'I wish I had waited for Gandalf,' Frodo muttered. 'But perhaps that would only have made things worse.' 'So what do you know or guess about that rider?' Pippin asked, hearing the murmured words. 'I do not know, and I do not want to guess,' Frodo said. 'All right, Mr. Frodo. You may keep your secrets now if you wish to seem mysterious. Meanwhile, what shall we do?'
'I want to have supper, and yet I think we should leave here.'
'The way you speak of these riders sniffing with invisible noses does not make me feel at ease.' 'Yes, I think we should move on now,' Frodo said. 'But not on the road, just in case the rider returns or someone follows him. We should cover some more ground today. Buckland is still a few miles away.' The shadows of the tall trees stretched long and thin across the meadow as they set off again. Now they kept a short distance to the left of the road, striving to stay out of sight. But this created difficulties. The grass was thick and tangled, the road uneven, and bushes began to grow. The sun had set, glowing pink behind the hills behind them, and the afternoon had come before they returned to the village road after a few miles. Here it turned left and led down to the lowlands of Yale made for stock. But a village road turned right, passing through a grove of ancient oaks toward Woodhall. 'That's our road,' Frodo said. Not far at the junction they entered a large tree. It was still alive and had leaves on the small branches sprouting around the broken trunks of its long fallen leaves. But it was hollow, and one could enter through a large crack facing the road. The hobbits went in and sat on a floor of old leaves and decaying wood. They rested there and had a light meal, speaking softly and listening carefully all the while. Twilight had fallen when they crept back out to the village road. The west wind rustled through the branches. The leaves whispered. The road soon began to fade steadily into darkness. A single star appeared among the branches in the western night ahead of them. They continued walking together to keep up their spirits. After a while, as the stars grew larger and brighter, the sense of unease left them, and they no longer listened for the sound of hoofbeats. They began to hum softly, as hobbits often did on the road, especially when nearing home at night. For most hobbits it was a song about supper or bed. But these hobbits sang a road song, though naturally it still mentioned supper or bed. Bilbo Baggins had crafted the words to an ancient hill tune and taught it to Frodo as they walked the paths of the water valley, speaking of adventure. On the hearth, the fire still glowed red under the tree we take as bed, yet our feet are never weary. We still go to meet the road's corners, suddenly finding a tree or a boulder. No one sees it but us alone flowers. Leaves, grass and trees drift on, they drift on.
They drift on,
Hills and waters under a cosy sky overcome them.
Overcome them!
Around each corner may still hide a new road or a secret gate, and though we may have passed today, we can return tomorrow to enter secret paths hidden deep toward sun or toward moon and stars, apple tree, thorn bush, chestnut, or slow leap over. Leap over, sandstone, pond or valley, farewell all. Farewell all. Home behind, the world ahead, and many roads yet to tread, through the darkness, at the edge of night, until countless stars shine bright. Then the world behind and home ahead, we return to house and to bed, in a few steps, mist and twilight. Dark clouds and gloom will fade, fire and lamp, meat and bread, then to bed.
Then to bed?
And the song ended.
And now to bed, and now to bed, Pippin sang aloud. Shush,
Frodo said.
I think I hear hoofbeats again. Suddenly they crouched low and stood still like the shadows of the trees, listening.
Hoofbeats echoed along the narrow road behind them, slow at first, then carrying clearly in the wind. They quickly slipped off the road in silence, then ran into the deeper darkness beneath the oaks. Don't go too far, Frodo said.
I don't want to be seen, but I want to see if it's another Black Rider. All right,
Pippin said. But don't forget he might be able to smell us. The hoofbeats drew closer. They had no time to find a better hiding place than the dark shadow beneath the trees. Sam and Pippin huddled under a large trunk, while Frodo stepped a few paces toward the village road. It was grey and pale, like a faint streak of light through the forest. Above, stars crowded the dim sky, but no moon. The hoofbeats stopped. When Frodo looked out, he saw something black moving across the lighter space between two trunks, and it stopped. It looked like a black shadow of a horse being led by a smaller dark figure. The shadow stood near where they had just left the road, swaying from side to side. Frodo thought he heard a sniff. The shadow bent down to the ground and began crawling toward him. Once again the desire to put on the ring overcame Frodo, but this time it was stronger than before. So strong that almost before he realized what he was doing, his hand had again slipped into his pocket. But at that moment, a sound arose, mingling singing and laughter. The sound rang clearly and filled the starry sky. The shadow stood upright and withdrew. It mounted the black horse and seemed to vanish down the road into the darkness beyond.
Frodo exhaled in relief. Elves!
Sam exclaimed hoarsely.
Elves, sir!
He dashed across the trees toward the voices if they hadn't pulled him back in time. Yes, they are elves, Frodo said. Sometimes one can meet them at Woody End. They do not live in the Shire, but they often come there in spring and autumn, travelling from their lands beyond the Towers hills. I am very grateful they do. You didn't see, but the Black Rider stopped right here, and really was crawling toward us when the song began. As soon as he heard the singing, he vanished immediately. And the elves? Sam asked, too excited to worry about the rider anymore.
Can we go to them? Listen. They're coming this way, Frodo said.
We just wait. The singing grew nearer. A voice rose clearly above the others. It was the singing of elves in their pure tongue, which Frodo knew very little of, and the others hardly at all. The sounds flowed with a melody that seemed to turn thoughts into words, which they could only partially understand. This was the song Frodo heard. White snow.
White snow. Oh, pure princess.
A queen beyond the western seas.
O radiant one whom we have come to, world of countless trees, Gilthoniel. O Elbereth, cleanse the eyes of men and purify the breath-white snow. White snow.
We sing to you in a far land beneath the deep sea. O stars in the sky where no sun shines, with beams swiftly wrought by her. Over wind-swept plains, now bright and pure, we have seen her silver blossoms bloom.
O Elbereth, Gilthoniel.
We still remember we are those there in distant lands beneath the trees. The starlight of you shines over the western seas. The song ended. They are high elves.
They speak of Elbereth,
Frodo cried excitedly. They are the purest beings ever seen in the Shire. There are few left in Middle-earth, east of the Great Sea. Truly, this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. The hobbit sat in the darkness by the road. Soon, the elves came down the small village road toward the valley. They passed slowly, and the hobbits could see starlight sparkling in their hair and eyes. They carried nothing shining, yet as they walked, a faint light, like moonlight before it rises, seemed to glow beneath their feet. They were silent, and when the last elf crossed, he turned back, looked toward the hobbits, and laughed. "Hello, Frodo," he called. "You were late."
Or perhaps lost.
Then he called to the others, and the company stopped and gathered around them. "This is wonderful," they said. "3 hobbits in the forest at night. We have not seen such a thing since Bilbo departed." "What does this mean?" "It simply means, good folk," Frodo said, "that we seem to be traveling the same road as you.
I like to walk under the stars.
But I will welcome you as companions." "But we need no other companions, and hobbits are not wise," they laughed. "And how did you know we were on the same road when you did not know where we were going?" "Then how do you know my name?" Frodo retorted. "We know many things," they said. "We used to see you with Bilbo, though you may not have seen us." "Who are you, and who is your lord?" Frodo asked. "I am Gildor," their leader replied, the elf who had called to him earlier. "Gildor Inglorian of the house of Finrod. We are the exiles, and most of our kin have long since gone, and we linger here only a while before returning to the Great Sea. But some of our kin still dwell here in peace in Rivendell.
Come now, Frodo, tell us what has happened."
For we can see some dark shadows frightening you, O wise man," Pippin eagerly interrupted. "Tell us about the Black Riders." "Black Riders?" they whispered in response. "Why do you ask about Black Riders?" "Because 2 Black Riders chased us today, or perhaps one chased twice," Pippin said. "Just now he left when you came near." The elves did not answer immediately, but spoke gently among themselves in their own tongue. At last Gildor turned to the hobbits. "We will not discuss this here," he said. "We think it best you come with us now. This is not our custom, but this time we will let you travel our road, and you may rest with us tonight, if you wish. Oh, good men."
"That is far more than I hoped for," Pippin said.
Sam could hardly speak. "I am greatly thankful to you, Gildor Inglorion," Frodo said, bowing. "Ellen silla lumen omentielvo, a star shines upon the hour we meet," he added in the tongue of the High Elves. "Be careful, friends." Gildor laughed.
"Do not speak of secrets."
"Here is a scholar in the old tongue." Bilbo was indeed a good teacher. "Greetings, friend of the elf," he said, bowing toward Frodo. "Come to your companions and join us. Best for you to walk in the middle, so you do not get lost. You may grow tired before we stop." "Why? Where are you going?" Frodo asked. "Tonight we go to the woods on the hills above Woodhall. It is a few miles, but you will rest at the end, and it will make your journey tomorrow shorter." They walked again in silence, moving like shadows through the faint light, for the elves, even more so than hobbits, can move at will without making a sound. Pippin quickly began to feel sleepy and swayed once or twice, but each time a tall elf beside him reached out to steady him. Sam walked beside Frodo as if in a dream, his face half fearful, half awestruck. The forest along both sides grew denser, the trees now young and thick. As the village road descended into a hollow among the hills, more layers of brush covered the slopes on either side.
At last the elves turned off the main path.
A green track, almost hidden through thick foliage to the right, wound up the wooded slopes on the crest of a hill overlooking the lower lands of the river valley. Suddenly they emerged from the dark woods, and before them lay a wide grey meadow under the night sky. The forest surrounded them on 3 sides. But to the east, a sloping land and the tops of dark trees rising from the valley floor came into view below. Behind, the lowlands lay faint and flat under the stars. Closer, a few flickering lights glimmered in the village of Woodhall. The elves sat on the grass, speaking softly among themselves. They seemed not to notice the hobbits. Frodo and his friends wrapped themselves in cloaks and blankets and began to drift into sleep. The night passed, and light once again filled the valley. Pippin slept sprawled, resting his head on a small mound of earth. High above the eastern Remirath, the star net, twinkling, and the red Borgil slowly rose from the mist, shining like a jewel made of fire. Then the air shifted, and the fog was swept aside like a net, and everything seemed to tilt as the sky knight, Menelvagor, with his shining belt, rose from the left rim. The elves' singing broke out. Suddenly a blaze flared beneath the trees, casting a red light. "Come here," the elves called to the hobbits.
"Come, it is time to speak and rejoice."
Pippin sat up and rubbed his eyes. He shivered. "There is a fire in a hall and food for hungry guests," an elf standing before him said. To the south stretched a meadow before them. A green track ran into the forest, forming a large open space like a room, the ceiling made of tree branches. The great trunks looked like pillars reaching in every direction. In the center, a fire blazed from flickering logs, and above the tree pillars, torches shone with molten gold and silver light. The elves sat around the fire on the grass or on rings of wood cut from old trunks. Some walked back and forth, carrying cups and pouring drinks. Others bore plates piled with food. "These are simple fare," they said to the hobbits, "for we are travelling through the green woods far from our halls. Were you ever our guests, we would entertain you better." "To me?"
"It seems enough for a birthday feast," Frodo said. Then Pippin remembered very little of the food or drink,
for his mind was entirely filled with the light on the elves' faces, and the sounds of strange and beautiful noises made him feel as if he were in a dream. But he recalled that there was bread, of a quality surpassing the finest white bread for those starving, and fruit, sweet as wild strawberries, and more than the cared-for fruit of gardens. He drank a cup full of a fragrant wine, cold as a clear spring, golden as a midsummer noon. Sam could not put into words, nor fully imagine to himself what he felt or thought that night, though it remained in his memory as one of the greatest events of his life. The nearest he could say was, "Well, sir, if one could grow apples like these, then I could call myself a gardener. But it is an art that reaches into my heart, if you understand what I mean." Frodo sat there, eating, drinking, and talking cheerfully, but his mind was ever upon the words being spoken. He knew a little of the elvish tongue and listened eagerly. Occasionally he spoke to those who served him, thanking them in their language. They smiled at him and laughed, saying, "A jewel among hobbits." After a while, Pippin grew sleepy, and he was lifted and carried to a thicket beneath the trees. He lay on a soft bed and slept through the rest of the night. Sam refused to leave his master. When Pippin was gone, he came and curled up at Frodo's feet, eventually laying his head down and closing his eyes. Frodo remained awake for quite some time, talking with Gildor. They spoke of many things old and new, and Frodo asked Gildor quite a lot about what had occurred in the wider world beyond the Shire. It all seemed rather sad and troubling. Darkness gathering, the wars of men, and the travels of the elves. At last, Frodo asked the question weighing most heavily on his heart. "Tell me, Gildor, have you ever met Bilbo since he left us?" Gildor smiled. "Yes," he replied. "Twice. He bade us farewell right here. But I saw him again once, far from here." He said no more of Bilbo, and Frodo was silent. "You do not ask me or tell me much of what truly concerns you, Frodo," Gildor said. "But I know quite a bit, and I can read much on your face and in the thoughts behind your questions. You are leaving the Shire, and you still doubt whether you will find what you seek, or achieve your desire, or ever return. Is that so?" "Yes," Frodo said. "But I think my journey is a secret known only to Gandalf and my faithful Sam." He glanced at Sam, who was snoring softly. "This secret will not reach the enemy through us," Gildor said. "The enemy?" Frodo said. "And you know why I left the Shire?" "I do not know why the enemy pursues you," Gildor replied.
"But I know who he is, though to me he is truly strange."
"And I warn you that danger is now before you and behind you and on every side." "You mean the riders?"
"I fear they serve the enemy. What are the Black Riders?"
"Did Gandalf not tell you anything?" "He said nothing about these creatures." "Then I think I have little more to say. Let the horror guard you on your journey. For it seems to me you departed at the right moment, if you indeed departed just in time. Now you must hasten, not stopping or turning back, for the Shire no longer offers protection for you." "I cannot imagine there being information more frightening than your guidance and warning," Frodo exclaimed. "I know danger lies ahead, certainly, but I did not expect to meet it right in the Shire. Can a hobbit not go from water to river in peace?" "But it is no longer your Shire," Gildor said. "Others lived there before the hobbits, and others will live there when hobbits are gone. This wide world is all with you. You may fence yourself in, but you cannot fence the outside forever. I know, but it has always seemed safe and friendly. What can I do? My plan was to leave the Shire quietly and go straight to Rivendell. But now my steps are hunted before I can even reach Buckland." "I think you should still pursue that plan," Gildor said. "I do not think the path is too hard for your courage, but if you want clearer advice, you should ask Gandalf.
"I do not know the reason for your journey."
And thus I do not know why those who pursue you attack you. Gandalf must know these things. I think you will see him before leaving the Shire, yes?" "I hope so, but that is another matter causing me worry. I've waited for Gandalf many days. He was to return to Hobbiton 2 nights ago, but he has not been seen."
"Now I worry what has happened."
"Should I wait for him?" Gildor was silent for a while.
"I do not like this news," he finally said.
"When Gandalf is late, it bodes no good. But they say, 'Do not interfere with a wizard's affairs, for they are wise and swift when angered.' The choice is now yours, go or wait." "And they also say," Frodo replied, "do not seek advice from the elves, for they will say yes and no at the same time." "Indeed?" Gildor laughed. "Elves seldom give advice lightly, for advice is a dangerous gift, even when a wise one counsels another wise.
All may go wrong."
"But what will you do? You have not told me all your worries, and how can I choose better than you? Yet if you ask advice, I will give it for friendship's sake. I think you should go now without delay, and if Gandalf does not arrive before you depart, I also advise do not go alone.
"Take faithful and willing companions."
Now you should be grateful, for I give this advice gladly. Elves have their own work and sorrow and seldom care for the affairs of hobbits or any other beings in this world. Our paths rarely cross theirs, whether by chance or design. In this meeting there is more than a mere opportunity, but the purpose is unclear to me and I dare not say more." "I am most grateful," Frodo said, "but I wish you had told me more about the Black Riders. If I follow your advice, I may not see Gandalf for some time, and I should know the danger that pursues me." "Is it not enough to know they serve the enemy?" Gildor replied.
"Flee from them. Speak no word to them."
"They are dead already."
"Ask me no more."
"Yet my heart forewarns that before all is ended, you, Frodo, son of Drogo, will know more of these matters than Gildor Inglorian."
"Perhaps Elbereth will protect you."
"But where will I find courage?" Frodo asked. "That is what I need most." "Courage is found in unexpected places," Gildor said. "Hold fast to hope.
Sleep now."
In the morning we will go, but we will send word throughout the lands. The wandering friends will know of your journey, and those in power will watch over you. I declare you a friend of the elves, and perhaps the stars will shine upon you to the very end of the road. Rarely do we take such interest in strangers, and it is fitting to hear the ancient words from the lips of wandering folk of the world." Frodo felt sleep coming, even as Gildor concluded his speech. "Now I will sleep," he said, and the elf led him to a thicket beside Pippin, and he threw himself onto the bed and slept a dreamless sleep.